If you feel like there's too much to keep up with, you're not wrong. There is. More information, more opinions, more strategies, more tools, more content than any one person could ever fully process. And with that comes pressure. Pressure to stay informed, to stay relevant, to stay competitive. It feels like if you don't keep up, you'll fall behind. So most people respond the same way. They try to absorb more, read more, watch more, learn more, stay connected to everything. It sounds like the right move, but it creates a problem, because the people who think the clearest are not the ones who process the most. They're the ones who ignore the most. That's the part that's easy to miss. We tend to associate intelligence with accumulation, knowing more, understanding more, being aware of more. But in a world where information is infinite, accumulation stops being an advantage, because everything you take in competes for your attention. And when too many things compete, clarity disappears. This is where the misunderstanding happens. People assume they need to get better at processing, more efficient, more disciplined, more organized. But processing more doesn't reduce pressure. It increases it. Because every piece of information you engage with creates a new thread in your mind. Something to consider, something to remember, something to evaluate. And those threads don't disappear on their own. They stay active, they create mental load. And when enough of them build up, your thinking starts to feel crowded. This is why even highly capable people can feel mentally overwhelmed, not because they lack intelligence, but because they're engaging with too much. This is the midpoint realization. Clarity isn't built by taking in more. It's built by allowing less to compete. Think about what happens when you don't ignore anything. Every opinion matters. Every strategy feels relevant. Every new idea deserves attention. Your mind stays open, but it also stays busy, constantly evaluating, constantly comparing, constantly deciding what to do next. And that constant activity creates friction, because your attention never settles. It keeps shifting from one idea to another, from one input to the next. And without stability, clarity can't form. Clarity requires space. It requires your mind to stay with one direction long enough to develop it. When everything feels important, nothing gets that space. This is where ignoring becomes powerful, not as avoidance, but as selection. Ignoring is the act of deciding what does not deserve your attention, not because it isn't valuable, but because it isn't relevant to your direction. That distinction matters, because the modern world is full of valuable information. But not all of it is valuable to you right now. Clear thinkers understand this. They don't try to process everything. They narrow the field. They decide, this matters, this doesn't. Not now, not relevant. And once something is outside that field, they let it go. They don't revisit it. They don't debate it. They don't keep it open in the background. They move on. That's what creates mental space. This is the difference between exposure and engagement. You can be exposed to a lot of information, but you don't have to engage with all of it. Most people blur that line. They see something and they feel the need to process it, to understand it, to evaluate it. But clear thinkers separate those two things. They allow exposure, but they control engagement. And that control protects their attention. This is where the cost of not ignoring becomes clear. When you don't ignore, everything competes. Your attention is constantly divided. Your decisions take longer. Your thinking becomes reactive. You start responding to what's in front of you instead of building what matters to you. And over time, that creates instability, because your direction keeps shifting, not based on intention, but based on input. This is also where artificial intelligence amplifies the situation. AI makes it easier to generate ideas, more options, more directions, more possibilities, which can be powerful, but only if your filter is strong. Without ignoring, AI becomes another source of overload, more things to consider, more paths to evaluate, more decisions to make. But with ignoring, AI becomes leverage. You can generate multiple options quickly and, just as quickly, discard most of them. You don't need to explore everything. You only need to identify what aligns. That's where clarity stays intact. This is the second re-anchor. You don't need more information. You need fewer competing inputs. That's a very different approach. It shifts the focus away from consumption and toward selection. Clear thinkers don't try to win by knowing everything. They win by staying aligned with what matters. They protect their attention. They protect their direction. And they understand that attention is a limited resource. Not everything deserves it, even if it's interesting, even if it's useful, even if it's valuable in a different context. If it doesn't serve your current direction, it creates noise, and noise weakens clarity. This is where thinking becomes disciplined, not through effort, but through exclusion. You decide what enters your attention, and more importantly, what doesn't. That decision simplifies everything. Because once fewer things are competing, your thinking stabilizes. Your decisions become easier. Your focus becomes stronger. Your direction becomes clearer. Not because the world changed, but because your filter did. Here's the closing truth for episode 20. In a world that constantly offers more, clarity comes from choosing less. Not less thinking, less competition for your attention. Because the moment fewer things compete, your mind settles. And when your mind settles, clear thinking returns.